Thank you very much, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Vicky, Chief Strategy Officer from FCB Inferno, and this is Kate Dale, who's my client from Sport England, the architect of This Girl Can. And we're here to talk about generating a return on purpose, but using This Girl Can as the example. And I think probably all of you will be aware, over the last, 9 months or so, there's been a huge amount of discussion in the marketing press about the role of purpose. And there have been, it started off pretty positive, and then there have been a few criticisms creeping in. So some people have been asking, is it actually just a sort of a cynical attempt at some small CSR projects and to get a bit more bang for people's buck on that? Or in fact, can you actually make any money from purpose? And what we want to talk to you about today is we believe you can, and we believe purpose is something incredibly powerful. The reason we think it's powerful is for a number of different perspectives. The first is from I suppose, thinking of purpose from a human perspective and how it operates within human beings. And there is undoubtedly, it's almost like there's a force acting within us that draws us towards things with purpose, people with purpose. And there's a short clip I want to show you now from a chap called Richard Leader, who's one of the US's top coaches, life coaches, and he talks about purpose in a very interesting way.
Imagine a pill that would aid cognitive decline by as much as 40 or 50%, Alzheimer's, that would reduce macroscopic stroke by 40%, that would aid sleep and sleep apnea, and would add 7 years to your life. Imagine a pill like that. How much would you pay for that pill? Well, that pill is free. It's called purpose.
So purpose obviously has a profound effect on us as human beings, but does it have such a profound effect on business? And interestingly, Ernst & Young and Harvard Business School did a study a short while back where they looked at different types of companies, and they isolated companies that actually had a strong social purpose. And what they found was actually those companies that led with purpose were more likely to be profitable. So from both a human and a business perspective, there seems to be something here. They also looked in a little bit more detail at how these companies were being successful. And what they found was that those companies that had purpose at their core, they were growing more. So on this chart, the laggards are companies that have no sense of social purpose, and nor do they intend to get any. The developers they believe in it, they're on it, but they haven't quite managed to do it properly yet. And the prioritizers are the people who are really clear on their purpose in the world, and they're living by it. And as you can see, the laggards are much more likely to be flat or in decline, and the prioritizers much more likely to be 10+% of growth. And that's not to be sneezed at in this day and age. They also looked at other business functions. And they looked at things like companies expanding geographically, launching new products, or even undergoing some major transformation. And here you can see the laggards in the grey are much less likely than the prioritizers, who are in the green, to be successful at these kinds of initiatives. And what was really interesting was they concluded that purpose-driven companies make more money, have more engaged employees, and more loyal customers, and are better at innovation and transformational change. And then they summed it up by saying it seems to be easier to win the game if you care about the game. And I think therein lies perhaps the answer to how we can make purpose really work for us, and how companies should be thinking about purpose. It is about caring what they do and caring what their role in the world is. Why is that important? Well, the Edelman Trust Barometer back in 2016 pointed out that actually 80% of people care whether a company is making money on the one hand, because we all know companies need to make money, but they care that it is also improving the social conditions of the community that it's in. And I think what we're moving away from is the kind of tactical CSR initiative, and moving much more to a world where corporate social value is core, where the purpose of the company fits with society, and it feels authentic and it feels real. This quote is, I think, probably very telling. It's from Forbes magazine. Jeff Boss said, "Crafting a powerful purpose is what distinguishes good companies from great companies, from legacy companies." And the obvious first step here is to go, okay, crafting a good purpose, how do we do that? We at FCB Inferno have a tool that we use to do that, which we call Brand Bedrock, which is absolutely designed around understanding what the purpose of the company or the brand is. Now, the purpose that you might choose, it could be a societal purpose, like the Harvard Business School study. They were looking at companies with societal purpose. It could be at that level, but it might not be. And we've identified 3 dimensions to purpose, which we think are important. And the 3 dimensions to purpose are as follows. The first dimension is commercial purpose. Every brand and every project that we might undertake as a communications agency has to have a commercial purpose at its core. If it doesn't have one, it's a complete waste of money. And you're better off putting your money in the bank than wasting it if you haven't got a commercial purpose at the core. The second dimension to purpose we call individual purpose. So this is understanding what people want, what might make people's lives better, understanding what their goals are, what drives them, and then trying to help them have a slightly better life as a result of interacting with our brand. And then the third dimension of purpose is what we've been talking about to date, which is social purpose. This is where you go the whole way and actually try and change society for the better through your brand, at the same time as delivering a commercial purpose. And brands should really be looking to do both of those, or at least 2 out of the 3 dimensions of purpose, if not all 3. And if you can get all 3, that's where it becomes really exciting.
Thank you, Vicky. And I have to say that 4 years ago, when we first met FCB Inferno, Sport England, we didn't know any of this. You may not have heard of Sport England unless you're particularly sporty. There's not a reason that you necessarily would have done, but we're a government organisation. We invest National Lottery and Exchequer money into projects, programmes, facilities, playing fields, leisure centres, things that help more people play more sport. And that's our remit, get more people playing more sport, being more physically active. We used to be based in this building, actually, so I've actually come home to where this girl can was first conceived, so it's quite a big moment. But yeah, so we were in these offices, and we knew that we had a problem, basically, and this was our problem. We'd been collecting data on how active men, women, all of us were since 2005, or 2006 was when it first reported. And over those 10 years, as you can see, participation levels did go up mostly. But the dip was mainly because people stopped swimming. So if you stopped swimming, please start again, because it makes my job easier. But participation levels did go up, but there was a real sustained gap between male and female participation. And it's really noticeable how that gap pretty much stays the same. So there's a whole group of women who we just weren't reaching. At its height before we launched the campaign, it was 1.75 million. And that's bad, but when you delve into that data a bit more, it was actually even more of a challenge back in 2013 when we were first looking at this problem. Because you can actually see that the gender gap was actually increasing. And we didn't understand why at first, because it's not as if people don't know. 75% of women said that they wanted to do more exercise. There's health messages out there. This was a year after 2012, and there'd been all that messaging around getting active, playing sport, the health and fitness industry, doctors, medical messages. People know about getting active, and most people know, like with all our health messages actually, we know about 5 a day, alcohol units, nicotine. We know about getting active, but for these women, 1.75 million at this stage, that wasn't making any difference. They weren't getting active. So we looked into why, and we went back to all the data, and women told us lots and lots of things. And it was this huge bank of research that we handed over to FCB when we appointed them and asked them, find out what we need to do. And so I think Vicky spent quite a long time in bunkers going through document after document after document and looking at all these things. And I don't know in this light how easy some of those are to read, but they told us lots of things. Exercise isn't cool, it's not feminine, I'm too fat to get fit. Here's one particularly heartbreaking one that I remember. I don't look good in lycra, forgotten the rules, look silly. I hated PE at school. I really did hate PE at school. Like it now though. Being seen as too competitive. There was all sorts of things. And what united all of these was a real fear of judgment. And whether that's fear of judgment by other people, or what can be even more damaging is fear of judgment of ourselves by ourselves. And that's the real thread that we identified with FCB, and that's a thread that really runs through the whole of This Girl Can, and led to us developing our campaign brief and us realising the real role for communications here. So it wasn't about creating more opportunities for women to get active, it was about making them want to quote Vicky, to make them care about the game, so they wanted to be in the game, quite literally, if it's hockey. So role for communications was about liberating women from the fear of judgments that were holding them back. This translated into a manifesto, which is our real DNA, and this sits at the root of everything, and this is what we test all our work, all our creative, all our messaging against. Does it live up to this manifesto? Women come in all shapes and sizes, all levels of ability. It doesn't matter if you're rubbish or an expert. The brilliant thing is that you're a woman and you're doing something. And that's what we wanted to bring to life with This Girl Can. We wanted more women, more girls out there to feel that and feel that they could go out there and get active too. And this is how we did it. One point I always... Thank you. I always feel sorry for the women who feature in our ads because we streetcast them all, which is a really important part of how we put This Girl Can together. And I think they're all quite excited to come along and take part in a film shoot. But then every drop of sweat you see, every smudge of mascara, every bit of red face was genuinely earned. So they had to do about an hour or two of exercise before we started filming. So I don't think it was the glamorous thing they thought it was going to be. We made them work really hard. Then in 2017, this year, we followed with this.
Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. But I say, I'm a woman. Phenomenally. It's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. It's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. Because I'm a woman. Phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. It ought to make you proud. That's my mother and my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers and your greats and my great-greats and all you women and me.
Amazing.
And of course, at the same time, after the first ad, and then again this year after the second ad, we followed that up with out-of-home advertising and billboards across the country that really brought the mantras and the fears of judgment and showed women really tackling those fears of judgment to life. So this is Sam, who we found at a park run. I think it was her second park run, and we were persuaded to take part in the ad. And this mantra, I jiggle, therefore I am, came directly out of what she told us about her reason for wanting to take part was to show her daughter that you don't have to be a supermodel, you don't have to be stick thin, you can be out there and you can be proud of who you are and still take part. And we deliberately placed some of these ads next to our women. So this was put next to in Bournemouth, where Sam lives, so that she could go out there and she could take her picture and then turn our owned media into earned media as well when she shared it on Twitter, and then back into owned when we shared it again. Calling out the idea that you always have to be getting better and better and better. There's a lot of sport that tends to be about personal bests and doing shuttle runs until you throw up and things like that. And if that works for you, that's fine. Doesn't work for all of us, and just getting out there anyway. So this is Grace, who cycles everywhere, struggles up a hill in Richmond here, has flowers on the front of her bike deliberately so that she doesn't look like she's trying to train for the Tour de France of everything, and really encapsulates that idea of just getting out there, enjoying it, and not really giving two hoots what anybody thinks. Obviously, inclusivity and diversity is a hugely important part of the campaign, but that's in terms of attitude as well as some of the demographic factors that we normally look at too. And one thing we wanted to make sure that we did is that when we did feature, in this case, somebody with a disability, that it wasn't just, oh, and here's a disabled person. It was actually about the attitude and what she was showing that is still relevant to all women. The campaign in 2017 expanded its target age range. Originally, we were 14 to 40, which is quite a challenging demographic. Taking it up to 60 plus makes it even harder. So we went from being relevant to a teenager and her mother, to her grandmother, and possibly even her great-grandmother. And finding things that resonated in different ways was really important. This is Sue, who swims in Tooting Lido, if you know it, all year round, and it's not heated. When we shot this, it was 2 degrees. Poor Sue, we had to keep getting her out. You could only be in the water for 2 minutes so she didn't get hypothermia. So we'd put her in, shoot, take her out, put in an electric blanket, take her off, put her back in, which would just make it worse, I think. So she'd have to, but she didn't get hypothermia, so that's good. But yeah, and Sue, who swims, and she had osteoporosis, broke both her wrists in quite quick succession. For her, getting back into the pool, getting swimming again was a way of really finding out who she was. And she talks about how swimming in the freezing cold, even in the middle of winter, makes her feel alive. Diversity again, obviously wanting to call out attitudes that aren't just relevant to somebody from a particular faith group, religion or minority, but something that we could all identify with and really challenge some of the stereotypes that there are out there. And also tackling life stages. So as women, we go through quite a lot of biological and physical changes throughout our lives. Childbirth being just one of them, menopause being another, and that's not something that's particularly talked about. It's how you rebuild that relationship with yourself and your body afterwards. So this is Debbie, I think, who goes to childcare classes where they use the babies as weights. And as she says, it's great because your weights get heavier every week. Things are going in the right way, so you get stronger and stronger. But she also talks about how for her, just getting out and getting to the class helped her become Debbie again, rather than just feeling like this new mum who didn't know what the heck was going on. So really including that too. So the question is, does this campaign, or did this campaign work against the 3 dimensions that we've identified for purpose? And the first dimension I wanted to talk about was individual purpose. So we very much set out to give women confidence, to inspire them to exercise, but also to help give them the tools to overcome the judgments that they were feeling. And there's a whole load of quantitative proof that we have from Sport England's Insight department, but we also received huge volumes of what we've called social proof that this was working, which is people tweeting and posting and sharing their thoughts with us about how they feel and the effect that the campaign has had on them. We now have an online social community of over 800,000 women, and what's been really wonderful is as the campaign has progressed, they really, and I think it's this connection with purpose, they've really taken it to heart. So they support, motivate, encourage each other on the thankfully rare occasions, something we do is criticise, or someone has a question about, for example, why we're only targeting women, they jump in and they talk about the campaign and they say what it means to them, and they do, we call them our Tinkerbells, because they're the opposite of trolls, and they do that work for us. And I think it's because we've made that individual connection so strongly with women. Vicky also talked about the need for social...
oh, there's one more. Click one more time.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Sorry, just to sum that up. Sorry. For social purpose, very well choreographed, sorry. Social purpose as well, so where we start to make societal change. And something that started to happen really quickly after we launched the first campaign were people doing their own versions. And so organisations, schools, sports clubs, universities, all doing their own versions of This Girl Can and taking and amplifying our message even further.
This Girl Can app, and it's women exercising, sweating, looking great. And it's just a really fun, amazing, uplifting advert that really gets me going in the morning.
See, I have to say this is the first advertising campaign that I've ever worked on, so my heights are massively raised now. If I ever work on anything else, I just assume this is normal. Apparently it's not, so I may have peaked. Hopefully not. Yeah, so to get that sort of response, it showed that we knew that we were actually getting out there and making change, and people were really responding to it and wanting to be part of the campaign. And actually the first time that we knew that our out-of-home had gone up this time round was when people started tweeting about it and taking pictures next to it, because it had gone up a couple of days early. And we had amazing results. As Vicky said, we have government organisation, we have to M&E everything vigorously, quite rightly, which is National Lottery money, so we have to prove that it worked. And things went up and down in the right direction. So we've managed to start narrowing that gender gap and making a difference to sustained participation. And this graph on the left is women who have been doing at least 30 minutes moderate intensity activity at the time for the last 4 weeks, at the time at which they take part in our survey. And yeah, the gender gap started to decline. That equates to 3.2 million women who are more active than they were before the campaign began. And it's delivered commercially as well. We're not a traditional commercial organisation, so it might be easy to think that we don't have to generate the same sort of unit sales or profit margins that a private sector company would. We still have to generate value for money. We still have to prove that this investment of National Lottery money has actually worked, has actually delivered. And I wouldn't have said it if we didn't have the metric that proved it, and we do. But we have our return on investment is for every £1 that's spent, that we spend on promoting sport and activity, we generate £35 return. And that's because when you start exercising, you buy trainers, you buy kit, you buy an exercise bar, really do buy an exercise bar. You buy gym membership or your sports club fees or whatever it is, but you start spending money. So that's money that goes directly back into the economy. So we can generate a real return for public money in this instance. It's also delivered a return overseas, and this isn't something, we're Sport England, it's not our remit to promote activity overseas. We didn't promote it overseas, we didn't put any paid for social overseas, but it picked up and it went global and it went viral. It was featured in pretty much, well, yeah, I think every continent apart from, we didn't make Antarctica, to my knowledge.
111 different countries.
111 countries. Countries who we maybe have very close cultural histories with, countries who it's less. And I think that certainly surprised me because it was such an insight-driven campaign based so much on the women who we were talking to that it felt like it was going to be very England only. But I think something about that purpose, a sense of perhaps women coming together, that sense of women's fear of judgment, the individual details of those judgments may change, but that sense of being judged by society, I think, is what really helped it resonate around the world. And this has delivered a return that we weren't anticipating. So in February next year, Vic Health, which is a health foundation in Victoria, Australia, is going to be launching the first overseas This Girl Can under license by us, and we're in talks with other countries to do similar expansions too. Now, naturally, it's a license. We get paid a license fee for that, so there's a direct return there. But there's a bigger return as well, because we are expanding the message overseas, because they're going to be sharing on social, because they're going to be generating messaging. They will help add to the momentum and help us achieve our aim, which is for the women and girls of all shapes and sizes, all abilities out there being active to be a complete societal norm. They will be contributing to that, so it's another return as well. And in a nutshell, that's how we delivered a real return on our purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Should wait, see if there's any. Are there any questions? Nope. Oh, yes, one.
Thanks. Congratulations. I remember seeing the videos, and it was a really well-done campaign.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering, in terms of using, I don't know if that's Maya Angelou, the poem, but in terms of using poetry or music, did you guys have to pay for that rights, or how did it work with these artists? I was just interested.
Yeah, we always have to pay, basically, to use people's words or music, depending on which it is. We were, I suppose, fortunate in some ways, because I think, obviously, Maya Angelou is unfortunately dead now, but her estate were very happy for us to use her words and for her voice, that is actually her voice, to be laid over the music and the actions. And I think they could see that what we were trying to achieve was something that would have been very close to her heart as well. Having said that, of course, you still have to pay for everything, but there's also an element of yes and no that goes on as to whether we'd be allowed or not. So, but the short answer to your question is yes, we do have to pay. Great.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.